However, my point to you is, still, I think we need to get back to this point about you believing in only the Old Testament. Why do you believe in the Old Testament at all? Let's just start there.
I believe in the Old Testament because I've been brought up on it.
And now there we get back to the Hindu. He believes in what he believes because he's been brought. But these, you could have been kidnapped as a baby by 2 Indians and taken to Kashmir or wherever, and brought up by them as a Hindu, say, or a Muslim, or a Buddhist, or whatever it would be, and you believe that. So being brought up in something is no guide to whether it's true or not. No, but the point is, being brought up in something is no guide. The fact is, you were brought up to believe the Old Testament, no guide as to whether it's true or not. Were your parents gods? Angels? Well then, how can they be a source to know whether what you were brought up with was true or not?
It wasn't them that had the religious, what you call it, it was people. I mean, I went to a normal school, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
And as I remember, I don't know the capital, but I can't remember, it was such a the priest would come in and he would read the Old Testament.
But a priest would read the New Testament as well.
I don't think he ever did. So
I find that difficult.
Probably I wasn't listening, you know.
Well, okay, so not listening excludes the Old Testament, the New Testament for you.
I've read the Old Testament.
No, you didn't listen to the New Testament, which the priest would have been focused on more than anything else. That's the way it is with priests.
Okay.
So you didn't listen, so that means you for that reason you don't believe in the New Testament. That doesn't make sense. You've got to believe in if you're believing in what the priest was saying when you heard the Old Testament, you should believe in what he's saying when you heard the New Testament, even though you didn't really listen.
The Old Testament, right, is far much older than the New.
Yeah, but the Hindu scriptures are older than some of the Old Testament.
Keep going about the Hindu, aren't I?
Why not? What's wrong with Hindus?
I'm not a Hindu.
It's a diverse world. But you see, you said
Hindus
because you said that the Old Testament is older than the New, and that seems to be why you're accepting it. And I'm saying there's writings from the Sumerian civilization, which are older than books in the Old Testament. So why don't you follow those old religions, those even more ancient religions, Mesopotamian religions?
I mean, I have read the New Testament, but I haven't. So I've read the New Testament, but keep it over there. Keep the Old Testament. Because I don't believe them two should be together. Because remember, God created the heavens and the earth. And I'm sure if the Creator, I mean, I don't think he would have made that the new version of the Bible.
But if you've read the Old Testament, you know those prophecies of a Messiah. So who's the Messiah?
I don't know.
But in the book of Daniel, it says in chapter 9 that the Messiah must come and be killed before the temple and Jerusalem are destroyed. When was the temple and Jerusalem destroyed? They're not there now, are they? The temple is not there now.
I think it got destroyed during the Roman period.
Right, 70 AD, okay?
That was before Jesus was born.
Hold on. Let's just get some basic facts. The temple was destroyed in 70 AD, right?
I'm not that knowledgeable.
Do you trust me on that?
I trust you.
Thank you. Well, that means that the Messiah must have come before then, according to the prophet Daniel, in whom you believe because you believe in the Old Testament. So the Messiah came before 70 AD. The Jews do not say there was any Messiah before 70 AD. They don't even say there's been a Messiah already since before 2022. Only the Christians look at the Old Testament and say, yes, a Messiah must come, and it was an individual who lived before the temple was destroyed and was killed before the temple was destroyed, and that was Jesus of Nazareth. And if you think he was not alive when the temple was destroyed, you must read that Jesus went up to the temple several times, as is recorded in the New Testament, and The apostles went up to the temple after Jesus had ascended into heaven. So it's well accepted by all historians that Jesus and the apostles were alive before the temple was destroyed, for decades before the temple was destroyed. So believing in the Old Testament, you need to focus on that book to find the timing that must have applied for the coming of the Messiah. If the temple was still standing and it hadn't yet been destroyed, there'd be a fair point to say, well, the Messiah might yet be to come. But no, the temple went over 1900 years ago. Now, we know this is significant for the Jews because the Jews had a rule forbidding their Jewish students from reading and calculating from the book of Daniel. There was a curse attached to you if you did the calculation of when the Messiah must come from the book of Daniel, because it would clearly came to the time of Jesus. So they were forbidden from that. Furthermore, in the Jewish synagogue, they forbade, after a few centuries, the reading of Isaiah 52:13 to 53:12, because those two chapters and those verses of Isaiah predict the suffering of Jesus, pretty much as it happens. So you see, the synagogue forbidding the reading in their readings, they jump from 51 to 54, something like that, Isaiah, in the synagogue readings. And so that shows that they really take that section of Isaiah seriously as predicting Jesus' suffering and death and vindication. If that is so, and given that you believe in the Old Testament, there are two solid reasons for believing in the New Testament, which gives you a Jesus who lives and dies before the destruction of the temple and the town, Jerusalem, as Daniel 9 says, and for seeing that Messiah as Jesus, because Isaiah predicts him and the Jews exclude that, knowing the parallels are so strong. You can go further. Malachi, Micah, Genesis. These books, Old Testament books, give you a plethora of details about Jesus. His crucifixion is laid out in Psalm 22. You get Jesus quoting the Psalms himself to show who he is. So any decision you take to avoid the New Testament is a desire to avoid the responsibility that would fall upon you if you were to accept the clear messages from the Old Testament. If I was wrong, the Jews in the last 2,000 years would have come up with a valid Messiah. But they haven't. They've tried various candidates and then they've dumped them because they didn't meet the requirements. So you're standing there, hearing this, and I know we've talked many times, so I don't think you'll change your position. But I think your position is shown to be illogical given your belief, your stated belief in the Old Testament. But what I actually think, and don't take this harshly because I'm not doing what a born-again Christian would do to you, I think you don't really believe in the Old Testament. That's what I think. I think you come here and say to me, you believe in the Old Testament, because you want to kind of say you're not an out-and-out atheist or an idiot deist. No, that's why I'm saying. You're not going to say to me, that's stupidity. You want a general belief in God, because, you know, we're here, we must have got here somehow. And you know that when we die, it's not the end. So you'll keep a view of a creator, but one in which you don't have to follow his orders. You don't have to do anything other than what you want to do in life. That's what I think. That's why the born-again Christians irritate you. I don't irritate you because I go easy on you. But they irritate you because they don't go easy on you. They say, you've got to be this, you've got to do that.
With you, you're different because I've known it. With modern-day born-again Christians, they just think there's something special.
Okay.
Give them that.
Okay, maybe they think they're special. Maybe it's an attitude of mind. But you know, when you're like them, and as you know, I don't believe in their religion, but when you've suddenly converted, you probably think you're the bee's knees, you know everything now, whereas you were an idiot before, and you need to tell the rest of the world that was like you in darkness what the truth is. That's why they're like that, I think. But also, when you're a heretic,
Which I'm not.
but no, them I'm talking about. When you're a heretic, you're going to have an unbalanced view of the world and an unbalanced view of Christianity. It's understandable. So I don't expect them to be able to kind of approach a person in a normal way. I've seen videos on YouTube, crazy born-again Christians. Crazy. And I don't mean they should be in a mental home. They're just a bit strange. But this isn't about them. I don't care about them. I'm talking about you. You see, we can talk about other people till the cows come home, but I'm concerned about you. You're using them as an excuse, I think. You're using them as an excuse not to be a Christian. It's another reason, another barrier you can put up.
I'm trying to delude you into some rather majestic idea that I'm, it's the perfect.
No. You've said that many times that you're not. You're not doing that. You're on the level.
All I'm saying, I am more or less, I wouldn't listen to the preachers anyway. I wouldn't listen to the Catholic preachers, not because I'm prejudiced or anything. I've never had any bad. I tell you the truth, I've never had anything bad said to me since I've been going to the church. Who's ever come up to smile and walk out? Now, I can accept that. But like I said before, if the priest come to me, if I was in the church, even we talk chat, this needs to go. No, he's not going to go shouting.
Well, firstly, he'd want to know, you'd explain to him why you've got that on. And then he'd say, oh, okay, fine. He might say what I've said, better to get a clear one.
Yeah, I will. Not this way.
But remember, that's because we're British and this is our culture. If you were in some other place, like Persia, like you said, it wouldn't necessarily signify anything. You don't have to take my advice on that, about what colour you should have. You don't have to do it at all. But I don't stand here in 2022 and say everything's cool. Say you were wearing eyeliner.
Which I'm not.
No, but many men do say it on stage, whatever. And it doesn't mean what it might mean. But I'd still say, look, we're Brits, don't do it. It's weird.
Makeup, and they say, I've just gone on my feminines.
Yeah, well, so I don't like, and a person who's got a man who's got really long hair, I'd say you should cut it. But that's me from my old-fashioned ways. It doesn't mean that he has to. No, St. Paul doesn't think a man should have long hair. It's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. But that can be taken as cultural, because the Catholic Church doesn't say you have to have short hair. But in the past it will have done, I'm sure.
No, what I mean, like,
it was a culture of its time. It meant in the 1st century AD in Judea, there was definitely something not right if you had it.
I can tell you this now, I was somewhere and I accidentally made a mistake because I thought, by looking one behind, I thought the guy was a woman going to the men's toilet. And I said, oh, men only in there, and he turned me, it was a bloke.
Okay.
And I was like, sorry, I thought, as I looked at him, I had to apologise. Yeah, it's long hair, I mean, look like a woman's hair. Curly hair, curly hair. Long. I thought that was a woman.
Well, these things happen.
So what I'm trying to say to people, to you, is I do believe in God.
No, I'm not that much.
And I do try my best. I believe that God already accepts me for who I am. Accepted for who I am. Because sometimes I get to be a Christian, I've got to do this, to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do this. And a little voice is saying, really? If you've got to do everything, then why don't you just slit your throat? Why don't you just slit your throat? Is that worth living?